Hello everyone, my name is Tamer Shrifa, Principal Solutions Architect here at AWS. And in this video, I'm going to show you AWS Managed Microsoft Active Directory Hybrid Edition. A new capability that lets you extend your existing self-managed Active Directory to AWS while preserving your current identity infrastructure and naming conventions like your Active Directory domain namespace and the UPN suffix for the user logins. I'll walk you through the key capabilities and deployment process and common deployment patterns. Some of the key capabilities of Hybrid Edition are it provides a seamless extension of your existing Active Directory, whether it's hosted on-premise or in AWS Cloud. We often see customers looking to preserve their Active Directory domain environment namespace while wanting to get the native integration with AWS services. An example we often see with customers is having an Active Directory domain with existing services like Exchange or SQL servers and wanting to extend this domain to AWS to be natively integrated with cloud services like Amazon FSx for Windows File Share or Amazon Relational Database Service. Hybrid Edition also gives you the managed scalability and reliability of AWS Cloud infrastructure, where you can scale across accounts as needed. This also gives you the operational flexibility of returning back to a fully self-managed Active Directory if your requirements changes in the future. Additionally, it does simplify the hybrid and multi-cloud deployments management by centralizing authentication, group policies, and domain trust relationships across environments while also retaining your existing Active Directory forest structure. So essentially, you're retaining the same Active Directory forest with the same naming conventions and same everything, you're just extending it to AWS. This gives you the operational benefit of managed cloud services with full functionality of your existing Active Directory deployment. The deployment process follows a straightforward 3-steps process. It starts with an assessment of your current Active Directory environment, and once successful, you'll be able to proceed to the next step, which is creating the Active Directory Hybrid Edition based on the assessment results. Part of this assessment will be looking at FISMA roles, password policies, replication, and a lot of other things within the domain. So the creation step will take the details you enter during the assessment, like your Active Directory domain specifics, like the namespace, the DNS services, IP addresses, and the self-managed domain controllers, which need to be part of AWS Systems Manager. And then it proceeds with the creation of the hybrid directory. And final step is the operational step, which we can maintain your Active Directory operations through your self-managed domain consoles or launch a cloud-based instance to manage your environment. Common deployment patterns that we see is having your Active Directory on-premise extended to the cloud directly. In this case, you would establish a VPN connection or direct connect to AWS, and you would extend your existing self-managed Active Directory from on-premise to the Hybrid Edition in the cloud directly. And in this case, the AD replication will flow directly between your self-managed DCs, which is on-premise, and the Hybrid Edition in AWS. The other common deployment pattern is having self-managed Active Directory domain controllers deployed in AWS. And in this case, the AD replication will be flowing directly between the Hybrid Edition instances and the self-managed EC2 domain controllers. However, connectivity between on-premise is still required in the second deployment pattern because that will be enabling you to do the replication between your self-managed domain controllers on-premise and the self-managed domain controllers on AWS. As I mentioned earlier, Hybrid Edition gives you the ability to share across accounts. These accounts could be part of the same organization or could be another account outside your free organization. Before we head to the demo, for full deployment prerequisites, scan the QR code or follow the link below. Now let's start creating the hybrid directory by going to the directory service page under AWS console. Then I'll start creating the assessment under the directory service page, where I'll make sure AWS Managed Microsoft AD is selected. Then I'll select Extend your existing AD domain with hybrid directory. Under the directory assessment creation page, I will enter my Active Directory domain information that I would like to extend. In my case, domain DNS name that I'm extending is example.demo. Then I'll enter the DNS server IP addresses. In my case, it's the self-managed domain controllers. Then I will select the VPC where the hybrid directory will be created. Security groups are optional in my case. However, it can be useful where your self-managed domain controllers are in a different VPC or an on-premise environment. Then we'll select the two AWS Systems Managed Domain Controller nodes. In my demo, these are hosted on AWS EC2 instances, and hit Next. Now we'll review the details we entered earlier and hit Create the Assessment. Once you hit creating the assessment, it might take up to 20 to 30 minutes to complete. Now, once the assessment is completed, we'll select it and create a hyperdirectory, which will pull the directory details from the assessment and ask for a credential secret to store the admin account used during the deployment. On the Secrets Manager page, I will select other type of secret, then enter two key value pairs. The first key is the AD domain username. The second key would be the password for this account. Then we'll make sure there is an encryption key selected for storing this secret. We'll give a name to the secret. We'll review the details of this secret and then store it. Then we will head back to the directory deployment page. Now we will select the secret we just created, review our details, then hit Create Hyperdirectory. The directory creation might take up to 45 minutes. Meanwhile, let's head to one of our self-managed domain controllers to check how does the Active Directory structure look like before the hyperdirectory extension, and then we will revisit it after the completion of the deployment. Here is in one of my self-managed domain controllers under Active Directory sites. You can see I have my Managed AD site, which is containing two domain controllers, and that's the Active Directory users and computers with the default OU structure where I have two domain controllers only. Now, since our deployment has completed, you can see under directories, there is one directory with active status. If you click on it, you can check a couple of details like VPC and DNS details we entered earlier. And also under actions, you can launch a directory administration EC2. However, in my demo environment, I'll be using my self-managed domain controllers for this purpose. Now let's head back to my self-managed domain controllers to check what has changed under Active Directory sites and services. You can see there is a new site with the prefix of AWS that's containing two domain controllers that has been created during the deployment. Now under Active Directory users and computers, if you refresh the domain controller default OU, you will see the self-managed domain controllers. But let's refresh the domain. As you can see, under the domain there is two AWS created OUs that's containing the domain controllers for the hyperdirectory and a couple of other security principles. And with that, we have completed the deployment.